any kind of sugar is deeply poisonous to the body. When I'm talking about any kind of sugar, I'm not talking about healthy sugars that appear in fruits and vegetables, for example, because in those forms, you have this incredibly healthy matrix of all the other cofactors.
Hello and welcome to Sweet Liberation, and we are super excited about today's episode because we are joined by someone we very much love and respect, Jayney Goddard. Hi, Jayney.
Hello, lovelies. How are you doing?
Great.
Very good, thank you.
Lovely to have
Thank
you
you for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to be covering some amazing topics today. Really can't wait. But Jayney, just for those people who don't know you as well as we do, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. And
yes, of course. I'd be delighted to. Yes. So my name is Jayney Goddard, as you said. Thank you very much for the glowing introduction. Well, my work centers around complementary medicine. And for example, for our viewers and listeners in the USA and other countries where the term complementary medicine isn't necessarily used, I guess you could conceptualize it by saying integrative medicine, or essentially anything that in the field of natural health care and well-being that isn't under the direct remit of conventional medicine. So essentially, 31 years ago, I founded a non-profit organization called the Complementary Medical Association, which over the last 31 plus years has gone on to become the world's leading, best known and best respected professional association for elite complementary medical practitioners or integrative medicine practitioners, training schools, organizations, and so on, of course, which Zukr is a member of. You are, in fact, a CMA approved supplier, which is a massive big deal because in our organization, we don't just take any company. Companies that we recommend and recognize have to be the best of the best. They have to be doing something that is markedly different from all the also-rans out there. And so we looked very, very carefully at Zukr. We looked very carefully at your standards, and we looked at your commitment to organic living and your massive commitment to the health and wellness of the population and society as a whole. That ticked all of our boxes. It checked all of our boxes, and that's why we were so excited to actually bring you on board with us as a member. So I'm a practitioner myself. I've written many books and more books in the pipeline still. So yes, I'm not about to hang my hat up just yet.
that is amazing. So yeah. And I know, Jayney, that you're very passionate about the subject of really, obviously, healthy living, but anti-aging and also the effects that sugar has on our bodies. Now, you've been a wonderful contributor and guest to Sweet Liberation in the past, so that's why we welcome you so warmly to the family. Thank you so much. But yeah, so tell us a little bit about your understanding, your expertise around aging and the way that sugar plays a role in the aging of the body.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think it's really important for our viewers and listeners, and sorry for any noise in the background there for anybody who's just gone, what was that? I've got a rescue dog and he's just discovered something in the fireplace. I might have to go and rescue whatever it is in a moment. It shouldn't be. I think I've put some nice things, nice flowers in the back of the fireplace for summer, and I think he's just discovered them. So we'll deal with that in a moment. But anyway, so aging is a really interesting topic. And our future wellness is also really tied into this. So the reason that I find this so fascinating, and in fact, the reason this is such the flavour of the moment, and it's really so much the zeitgeist right now, is because I think in generations gone by, it was believed that, your genes were sort of set in tablets of stone almost, and that if your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents had a particular type of illness, for example, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, or any of those conditions that we actually wrongly associate with being a natural part of the aging process, I think people used to tend to think, oh, well, my ancestors, my family had this, therefore I'm doomed to repeat this pattern. Now, what we know nowadays is that nothing could be further from the truth. We have so much more control over our future health and well-being than we ever realized was possible prior to this. And the reason that we know that we have so much more control and that the decisions that we make on a daily basis actually dictate our future health and well-being is thanks to the massive changes and strides that have been made in the field of epigenetics. And so what we know from the studies in epigenetics, epi meaning above, and then obviously genetics meaning our genes. So, what is it that's kind of going on above our genes? What are those external factors that come in that actually help our genes to either code for health and well-being or code for illness and kind of entropy? When I use the term code for, what it means is that it's about genetic expression. So we have genes, we were dealt a certain hand at birth, but what we know from this study of epigenetics is that external factors can switch our genes on or off for health or illness. So a really interesting study on this was undertaken by Dr. Dean Ornish and his colleagues, and it has been replicated time and time and time again, which is where Dr. Ornish took a group of men who had prostate cancer. They'd been diagnosed, and it was a slow-growing prostate cancer, so it was safe and ethical to run obviously a study on these particular people. They knew what the study was. They had signed their consent forms. Everything was done properly, Ornish being a brilliant and reliable scientist. And anyway, so what he did with this group of men who'd opted for what's called watchful waiting to see whether they needed any treatment, was the cancer going to grow, was it going to recede, what was going to happen to it? What they did was they did various lifestyle interventions, because what Ornish and his team wanted to look at was whether there was anything that we could do with our lifestyle that could actually maybe either improve the cancer, or was there anything that could be done that would actually maybe get the cancer to accelerate. Obviously, that was not desirable, but, he was open-minded enough to know that this could go either way. And of course, the participants knew this as well. So what he did with them was he put them onto a whole food plant-based diet. He got them doing exercise as far as sort of walking, gentle walking, and he also got them doing yoga. He got these men into a support group, so they had socialization. This is another important part of the study as well. And he also got them meditating. And so with this very sensible, very balanced kind of lifestyle intervention, what they found was that those genes that coded for, as I said, had the ability to express prostate cancer, to develop prostate cancer, or to grow it further, or to enhance that growth or speed it up, actually was switched off. And the genes that expressed or coded for health and well-being and lower inflammation and so on, they were actually switched on. So this is kind of intriguing. So what if he then took these same group of men and stopped the study and then just got them back onto their old lifestyle? And of course, it was then found that those genes that were expressing prostate cancer were switched back on again, and the genes that expressed health and well-being were switched off. So of course, he immediately put them back onto the healthy lifestyle. But it's remarkable, isn't it, that these studies have been actually repeated again and again and again. So what we know is that in just this one study example, study type, is that lifestyle has such an intimate role when it comes to our future health and well-being. And we know that if we do things like following a whole food, plant-based diet, if we are hydrating correctly, if we're getting correct sleep, if we're socializing well and healthily, if we are doing things like volunteering, if we're doing things like meditation, if we're managing our stress response, not trying to combat stress, or stress management, as it's sometimes called, which is really a misnomer. You can't manage stress. You can't stop stressors from happening. What you can do is manage your response to those stressors, which is what stress management tries to do, but actually kind of does very, very poorly at. By doing all of these interventions, we can reduce our levels of inflammation in the body. Now, as our viewers and listeners know by now, because they'll have listened to so many of your brilliant broadcasts, chronic inflammation underlies all of those illnesses that, as I said earlier, we wrongly associate with being a natural part of the aging process. Lifestyle-mediated cancers, heart disease, things like type 2 diabetes, obesity, all of these chronic debilitating conditions that absolutely decimate and destroy lives can actually be halted and even reversed using lifestyle intervention that is centered around reducing chronic inflammation. So what are the other things I think we should look at that actually really play into chronic inflammation? Well, one of those, of course, is excess sugar. As we know, and again, I'm sure our viewers and listeners know that any kind of sugar is deeply poisonous to the body. When I'm talking about any kind of sugar, I'm not talking about healthy sugars that appear in fruits and vegetables, for example, because in those forms, you have this incredibly healthy matrix of all the other cofactors that are found, let's say an apple. I mean, for example, if there's a lot of nonsense going around the internet saying, oh, don't eat fruit because it contains fructose, which of course causes fatty liver syndrome. If you were just to sit and eat spoons and spoons and spoons of fructose without any of the other cofactors and phytonutrients that we find in fruits and veg, well, yes, of course, you're going to have problems. And we know that because this research has been done in non-human models, for example, in rats and mice and rabbits and so on. So we know that anything to excess is going to be deeply problematic. In the real world, you really would find it very difficult to actually kind of match those sorts of study models, unless, of course, you were indulging in things like high fructose corn syrup containing products, the Coca-Colas and Pepsis and all of those other things, the full sugar versions of these things. And so really what we do need to understand is that when you're eating really highly processed foods that contain things like high fructose corn syrup and whatnot, you can expect things to happen. These products massively sugar drives inflammation. It's one of the most toxic things that we can do to ourselves. I'm sure that you've had other speakers say this, but sugar is more addictive, it's more deleterious, it's more dangerous than Class A drugs like heroin and cocaine. And it's as addictive, if not more so. So the big food manufacturers know this. They know about creating foods that are hyper palatable. So by adding sugar, by adding fat, by adding salt, they're creating these monster, highly processed foods that are so addictive because they play to what we have kind of come to think of as being tasty over the millennia. I notice this particularly, I spent a lot of time in the USA, and I notice, I rarely ever eat a dessert of any kind in America because they are that much sweeter than the European palate can even stand. And it's because the palate has become accustomed to these massively high levels of sugar. And it's driving all of these illnesses. It's driving these disease states. And people are getting sicker earlier. And although lifespans tend to be increasing due to things like antibiotics, things like hand washing, all of those things that are keeping us alive, they're stopping us from dying of, infections and various other, things that would have killed us off a lot younger many years ago. So lifespan is increasing, but health span is actually decreasing in Western environments. So it's really tragic, because what that means is that most people, unless they are living a really healthy lifestyle and they are making sure that they're eating whole foods, that they are really looking after their diet, they're taking appropriate exercise, they're managing their mindset, they're managing their response to stress, they're getting adequate sleep and hydration and all of the wonderful things that we know that we should all be doing, what will happen is they'll get sicker younger, and they've got more years in their lives to be tragically sick and debilitated and living an absolutely horrendous life. So this is why, what you're doing with Zukr is so profoundly important, because people don't want to feel that they're, just deprived. They don't want to feel that, I've just got to be this virtuous vegan who just eats whole food plants. Okay, yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. Let's not, veganism is not a diet. It's a compassionate lifestyle. So we'll put that to one side. But if somebody's just thinking, gosh, all I can eat is like lettuce and, get really depressed lettuce and cabbage and kale and all these really kind of things that they think might be boring without realizing just how wonderfully tasty all of these things can be, you get into this mindset of deprivation. And the problem with that is we human beings can only take deprivation when we've decided to do it for so long. And then what happens is like, I'm going to go eat a donut. And that's, we all know it. We've all been there. We've all done it. I'm going to eat a chocolate bar. Chocolate is my weakness, dark chocolate admittedly, but nevertheless, my goodness. So, we need sweetness in our lives. We need treats. All of these things are lovely. And I just admire, the way you guys are, with the incredible videos you do with your beautiful recipes. And I really do think, on one hand, people are going, oh, it's just cakes, or it's just brownies, or whatever the lovely things it is that you're making. But actually, it's so much more important than that, because these are the sorts of things that people can do for themselves at home that are actually going to make the difference. And if we can get people eating those sorts of things rather than, shop or cakes or, packed to the gills in sugar, it's actually going to make a massive difference. It will reduce inflammation, and it therefore is going to help reduce the predisposition towards these illnesses of aging that are hitting people at ever younger and younger ages. I'll give you an example. And I know I'm talking a lot, but I get very passionate about all this stuff, particularly when you realize, and these are not completely up-to-date stats, they are the most recent stats we have, but in America, in the last sort of, an average over the last 5 years or so, because we're just waiting for the new stats to come out now, but they are spending $14 billion a year on childhood obesity. This is not treating things like type 2 diabetes in childhood, which should not be happening. This is just treating the consequences of childhood obesity. 14 billion a year. You can't even, we run these sort of figures off. And it's not until you actually sit down and start to analyze, what is that on a daily basis? How many $1 million is that on a daily basis? That money has to come from somewhere, and it's coming straight out of the taxpayer's pocket. So by doing the sort of thing that you're doing, you're going to be helping to rewind that. So this isn't just about health, it's about society, it's about economics. There's a whole macro thing going on that you are making a massive, that the work you're doing has massive implications for.
It's so affirming. Thank you so much for your very kind words. And one of the things that was coming back to me is that we started this entire journey on looking at sugar, but not ever thinking that this is a problem that can be solved in isolation. And it's just so affirming that you're actually saying that some of the solutions we come up with as well for bringing people together and creating community and joyful living have to be part of the solution as well. Because otherwise, if it was just one diet product or another replacement that was in isolation going to fix the problem, then the problems would have been fixed. But it's this kind of integrated approach to solutions that is what's exciting us. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, and I think I'd echo that and say that the support as well behind it, because it is, if you're transitioning away, and we know these things aren't easy, And so therefore, that's where we feel that we also can help and assist people. Yeah.
That's right. And joyful living and being able to bring people together. So this is wonderful. And I know that you are very, very keen as well on meditation and mindfulness, which is something actually that we very much focus on as part of the solution. What do you think about that?
Yes, absolutely crucial. I mean, what we know about mindfulness and meditation is that it actually plays a very, very important role in reducing inflammation anyway. But there was a wonderful study that was done on soldiers. Are you familiar with this study, where they had a group of soldiers, and these soldiers were starting to get a little bit hefty. And so they were looking at ways of reducing, shall we say, adiposity. Particularly, they had gained weight around their middles. And which is actually really interesting, because that's dangerous weight. Visceral fat around our internal organs is actually, it produces, a lot of people don't realize this, but it produces pro-inflammatory cytokines. Cytokines are hormonal messengers that actually they have various jobs in the body. But unfortunately, the cytokines that are produced around visceral fat and belly fat, particularly are one cytokine is called IL-6, interleukin 6. And what this does is it drives inflammation like you just wouldn't believe. So there's that point there. The next point, though, also is that this adiposity around the belly, around the middle, also produces estrogens. And again, so this is really, really dangerous, because if you are a woman who is potentially prone to hormonally mediated cancers, this could potentially drive, and this isn't made up stuff, this is absolutely valid statistics. This can particularly drive breast cancer, uterine cancer, cervical cancer, ovarian cancers. And these cancers are actually incredibly dangerous, particularly the more sort of internal cancers for women, because the problem is it takes quite a while to find them. So they tend to be really quite far gone by the time they're actually diagnosed. Not in every case, obviously, but in many cases. So this is why we've got to be really aware of, weight gain, belly fat around the middle and around the internal organs. And so that's the first thing. Now, for these particular soldiers, these happen to be male soldiers. So of course, again, because this belly fat also produces estrogens, it has a very, very deleterious effect upon male physiology as well. Anyway, so what they did by way of experiment was that they had, I believe, if memory serves, I'm trying to get this right for you, they had 3 groups. One was a control group, and they were given a lecture on how to lose weight. The next group was asked to meditate, and they were taught how to meditate, and they also had the lecture on how to lose weight. And then the third group was asked to do a special kind of meditation called metta meditation. Metta meditation is a loving kindness meditation, and I have a version of it on my website if anybody would like to go, and feel free to download it, because it's so important. I've got it on my site up for everybody for free, because it is massively powerful. And it actually serves to reduce inflammation, but it does a lot more than that. So what was really interesting was that, and of course, the metta meditation group were also given the lecture on how to lose weight. What was actually interesting was that the guys were given free rein in the mess. They were allowed to eat whatever they chose to eat, but they were aware from their lecture on how to lose weight, portion size, maybe make better food choices, and so on and so forth. Everybody initially lost a little bit of weight, a couple of pounds, if that. But it was very interesting to note that obviously the guys who just had the lecture on how to lose weight, they just sort of slipped back to their old ways, and they regained all the weight that they lost. As we know, it always happens. Yo-yo dieting. We've all been there and done it and seen it and got the T-shirt and the commemorative mouse mat. Anyway, but then the guys the soldiers who were meditating, they did pretty well, actually. Their weight loss trajectory continued while they were still meditating. Okay. And that was okay. But the problem is when the study came to an end after about 8 weeks, the weight started to creep back because they didn't continue with their meditation. But the group who were doing the meta meditation, they were told at the end of the 8 weeks that they could, either continue to meditate or not. Some of them chose to, some of them didn't. But what was really interesting was that their weight stayed off. They didn't regain the weight. Now, it's very intriguing because what we do know is that meditation does actually reduce inflammation. It does help to particularly address, actually, interestingly enough, weight gain around the middle. But the loving kindness meta meditation enabled those soldiers to connect so much more deeply with themselves, treat themselves and others with greater degrees of kindness and awareness and connection, and actually understand their place in the universe and their undoubted connection to everything else in the universe. So essentially, moving themselves away from this kind of divisive or divided kind of us and them kind of perspective that so many of us have, but realize that actually there is great connectedness within the universe. And so as a result, they were actually able to be much more compassionate towards themselves. And because of that, they were able to make compassionate food choices on the basis that they were understanding that they were deserving of love and kindness. And actually, that they didn't need to necessarily kind of suppress their emotions with food and eating and, just eating to suppress pain. It's a fantastic study. Again, it's been replicated time and time again, and it still stands up. It's fascinating that people don't really make the connection between mental and emotional well-being and a compassionate lifestyle and weight gain and making healthy life choices.
That's amazing.
I don't think I could put that link together, to be honest.
You are like fountain of knowledge,
yes.
Jayney Goddard. That's all wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think one of the things, again, you're affirming one of the things that we've really come up with in terms of the journey for sweet liberation, this podcast, this broadcast, and also the app that we are launching at the moment, which is really exciting, which is a compassionate space, because loving people and, supporting them exactly where they are right now and embracing them with that loving support means that they are able to achieve anything they put their minds to when there's no judgment and so much love. So this is something we realized early on this journey, that people needed more compassion and this, especially.
That's the thing. Then thanks so much for coming on, because when you start seeing the multifaceted part of the puzzle and it's made up of more than just
something,
or cutting something out that's difficult and looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, it's a starting point, a starting block. Oh, that's so amazing. But Jayney, it's been such a pleasure to have you, and we hope that you will not be a stranger and we can have you back again, because we adore you and we love your fountain of knowledge and your beautiful, positive attitude that imparts so much love to our community and our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. And I'll be back anytime. More than happy.
We would love to have you back. So anything that you wanted to say back to Jayney?
No, well, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's just been really great, and it's really fabulous, I think, particularly for our listeners as well. And a lot of the references that you've said and the people that you refer back to about the different studies, again, that underpins everything that that knowledge and that information for people, I think.
So empowering. Knowledge is certainly power. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And we hope we'll have you back on Sweet Liberation. Lovely to see you. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.